is time now for Back Pages Tonight here on Sky Sports News. We're bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross and Guardian's reporter Paul McInnes. Welcome along to you both. Good to see you, fellas. We'll hear from you shortly. Let's quickly run you through the back pages as we have them so far. So the Telegraph sports section splash with Arsenal. I moved to Wembley as part of Emirates expansion. Yes, they're looking to add roughly 10,000 to their capacity there. They also have the rugby union story. Rugby defectors, you can see it there at the bottom, will be banned from tests, just right there at the bottom. The back page of the Star, well, they lead with these strong quotes from Steven Gerrard about his England career, the so-called golden generation. We were all egotistical losers, he said, and carry the quotes from Jordan Henderson, the X Factor. Jordan Henderson says leaving Liverpool was painful, like a breakup. It was certainly controversial at the time, wasn't it? The Guardian go with a night rides to the rescue. Batter saves England from Bangladesh shock after lucky escapes. And again, the story that we referenced before, rugby rebels rocked world biggest union vow to ban players in the R360 League. And, not surprisingly, Scottish Sun lead with the news that Steven Gerrard is eyeing a return to the dugout and says that he has unfinished business. Of course, there is a vacancy at one of his former clubs that he coached not so long ago. And in the eye, knight in shining armour. Unbeaten half-century ensures that England avoids shock defeat. The Women's World Cup, England have 2 from 2. And Anthony Gordon admits that he is fuelled by paranoia and the remarkable resurrection of Jordan Henderson's career, not just talking about Liverpool, but also, now with Brentford. Right, welcome along, John and Paul. So let's talk Jordan Henderson, and we're going to start off in the Times. And I mean, we mentioned before about the sort of resurrection of his career. We've seen the pattern, haven't we? From Liverpool out to Saudi, then back to Ajax, now at Brentford, back, where he spent a long time in the Premier League. And you can see here, it says, Henderson, I'm no cheerleader in terms of what his role is in football, potentially also, with England at a World Cup. His recent form, John, suggests that he's right, that he has more than just those sort of qualities as a good person to have around the squad, almost sort of as an auxiliary, rather than a first choice player.
Yeah, David, I think he's a really good player. There's no doubt about it. He's a really strong influence in the dressing room and on the pitch, I think, for younger players too. We were kind of blessed, actually, a few of us, in talking to him, that it was the day after. He played really well, despite the defeat, Brentford against Man City. There's no doubt about it. He's come back to the Premier League and been really steady, been really assured, been a good influence, I think. And that only highlights the fact then that basically I think he's a good person to have around. Listen, the debate over Jordan Henderson is going to divide the nation. There's going to be some people that you're going to never, ever convince. And basically, I think then to that end, I think it was really interesting that he did address the whole theory about kind of him just being there as a cheerleader, someone just a good egg basically to have behind the scenes rather than what he brings to the pitch. So he addressed that, and it was almost you pays your money, you take your choice. 3 really good lines, basically. I'm no cheerleader. He spoke really well about standing up for his pal Jude Bellingham because they are very tight and really I think they're a very good influence on each other. And then also the pain, frankly, of the breakup, as he described it, as it almost felt like a divorce, really the way that he was sort of kind of describing it when he left Liverpool and a couple of years ago. And obviously he had that sort of ill-fated time in Saudi, came back, resurrected his sort of kind of time in Europe with Ajax. But Jordan Henderson speaks so well. It was so good to hear from him, on the back of kind of Harry Kane, sort of kind of in today's papers. I do think it sets quite a nice mood and the positivity around the England setup. And honestly, Henderson speaks so well. It kind of, he's a good advert and a good advocate. There he goes, no alarm over Bell, speaking up sort of kind of for his mate Jude Bellingham. This very reporter wrote that piece, actually. So, he spoke really well. And listen, I'd have Jude Bellingham in that squad all day long and twice on Sunday. So it's a great debate. Henderson didn't quite go directly into that, but he did say what a fantastic player he is and great mental strength, and he'll be back. Don't worry about that because he's such a special talent.
Yeah, we saw on the back page of the Star, the X Factor quitting Anfield was like a breakup for Jordan. in that piece, I think it's clear that it had such an effect on him. I remember speaking to Jordan actually, would have been just a few months after his move. He was just settling in Bahrain. His family was sort of coming out. And he did actually say at the time, you don't realise quite what a shock it is. The culture change, the standard of the football. And that, I think, mixed in with this sort of breakup. I mean, that's, it's... You just focus, at the time, people just focused on two things, didn't they, Paul? They focused on the fact that it was going to Saudi, given his stance, backing LGBTQ plus communities, certainly in Liverpool, and the money that he was earning. But there was more to it than that, clearly.
I think there would be some people who would say, actually, those two factors were determinant, but he probably did have other offers, most likely to play on the continent, I imagine. He probably could have struck a deal with a club like Ajax, first of all, rather than second of all. But at the same time, we're all human and we can be tempted by things, particularly when they have lots of zeros put on the end. But I think what you can really say about Henderson is that he is a durable character. He made this decision to go to Saudi. It was a politically difficult one. He took it. He moved. As he had acknowledged, very different culture. I was there to watch him play his first game in the Saudi Pro League. It was 36 degrees at 9:30 at night. He was on his haunches after about 25 minutes. I would literally break into a sprint, looked like it was going to cause him to keel over. It was a very, very challenging environment. And he adapted and he made a fist of that for a while. So he faced up to that decision. Then he realised his England career was in jeopardy, really, and he needed to come back to Europe. He faced the music on that. I think for some people that he was never quite really wrestled with some of the thorniest aspects of that challenge of having principles that you express but then don't necessarily live up to. But he did at least answer questions, speak to people, and front up. Goes back to Ajax, is immediately made captain. Obviously, the results weren't perfect there. They choked the league last season, but he was a very important player for them and restored his reputation as a player and proved that he could do a job still in the top flight in England, which made Brentford, who are obviously very canny recruiters, they don't make many mistakes when it comes to buying players, be confident to bring him in and wanted him over Sunderland, who were linked with a sentimental return for him. So he's always willing to face up to challenges. He's always looking for a new challenge, and he's always pushing himself. And I think in talking up here about not being a cheerleader, I think there's probably a bit of a personal aspect in that for him as well. He doesn't want to be written off. He wants to be seen as still somebody who can make a contribution at any stage and at any moment for England. And as I see it, he's probably going to be in that squad partly for that cheerleading role, yes, but he's also going to be there to deputise for Declan Rice. And I'm sure Thomas Tuchel will have absolute trust in him to deliver in that role, should he need him to do, fingers crossed, we qualify for the tournament next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's an expanded tournament, don't forget. And also, just on to your point about, being a shrewd signing, I think when Brentford make shrewd signings, we're often talking about players that they scout and they pick up and they develop and that they, either sell on a big profit or they become fixtures in their sides, whereas this is clearly someone who's established that can work well, dovetail well with those kind of recruits that I mentioned before, and clearly still has so much value to offer. Back to your paper, John, and at the bottom of the back page, we were egotistical losers. Strong words from Steven Gerrard speaking to his former England teammate Rio Ferdinand. Were you at all surprised by just how deep set this was for Steven Gerrard? This kind of almost like this realisation, this recognition that, at the time they had this opportunity, but it just didn't come together because they weren't connected.
Yeah, I tell you what, David, it's worth noting is that Rio's quite good at this interviewing lark, isn't it?
Yeah, he's not bad. Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, he got Wayne Rooney really to open up on his kind of, issues off the pitch. And this time it's Steven Gerrard, who's incredibly candid. about the kind of the splits in the camp. I mean, for a long time, someone like me who's covered England over 20 years, it's been well known that you had cliques. You had the Liverpool and the Man United guys. And Gerrard really addresses this, front on. He's basically sort of almost laughing about the fact that, Carragher and Gary Neville now are great mates on Sky. And he gets on, he was saying that you and I, Rio, are basically getting on really well now doing this interview. And so why didn't it work at the time? But, he was kind of bemoaning that kind of split, and they weren't mates. They didn't have a connection. He was saying that he was bored in camp. I mean, he was sort of bemoaning the fact that sort of the hotel that they often stayed in only had 5 channels. They didn't even have Sky. Can you imagine?
Look, we all listen. We're all of a certain age, so we all remember when there were just even 4 channels actually, not let alone 5. I'm sort of laughing about it really, but he does sort of kind of hit on a wider point in that basically they had such a wealth of talent at their disposal. It was ridiculous that they didn't achieve more. When you consider that this current generation, who were sort of kind of hungrier, had sort of kind of less proven megastars, if you like, who've arguably done better than that generation of 2004, 2006. I mean, it is a great shame. It does feel like a sort of wasted opportunity. But I really admire Gerrard sort of kind of coming out and putting it sort of really sort of kind of in the open there and sort of saying about it on a day, of course, that he's very newsworthy himself, Gerrard, about other things and potential Rangers return. But I thought it was really interesting. And I tell you what, if the young players of today, sort of the players in that current England squad under Thomas Tuchel, can't learn from those words and perhaps don't read them, and then they've made a mistake, really, because I do think that's the wider point. And I'm sure that Gerrard, who I like so much, I respect him so much, and I think he's an intelligent guy, I'm sure that actually part of him is thinking, if this message can get through and have any help, I'll be really, really pleased about that ahead of next year's World Cup. Yeah, look, we've got to also think about the work that has been done in the meantime since Gerrard was playing for England, and what Gareth Southgate has done, and how he sort of united a squad that, it wasn't about the club rivalries and the factions anymore. And he seemed to really sort of create a different culture. I mean, that word that Gerrard himself sort of used. And actually, on Gerrard, back page of The Sun, and I'll send this one your way, Paul, Gerrard couldn't do a Trent, as in leaving Liverpool for Real Madrid. Although, of course, he could have done and had opportunities to. Both Real Madrid and indeed Chelsea, really the strongest link. Maybe he should have done.
I mean, I'm pretty sure John would have been on the doorstep asking him directly these questions back in the day. But I feel like it was my memory that he was sorely tempted to move to Chelsea. Yeah. And that there was a real prospect of a deal. Gerrard benefited from being an effective one-club player, for having this bond, becoming an icon of the team and of the city. And I'm sure he can look back on that now and say, well, that was worth it. Even though I didn't win as many trophies as I would have liked to, and maybe as many trophies as I could have done had I made that move, for me, it was worth it. I think what you've got to think about Trent is that he has won those trophies. He has a successful career at Liverpool. He brought the Premier League title back to Anfield after so many years away. So I think he should, and I am confident will be remembered as a key red and a key son of the city in future years because of what he did achieve. And it's understandable, really, that he would want to go and try his luck in another competition at an equally iconic football club in another part of the world, and also play a different style of football, one that may be more suited to his game. So it's horses for courses, and times change. And I think actually on this, maybe Gerrard is a little. I thought he was very insightful on his remarks about England. I thought that showed real introspection. But I think in the modern day, I think the asking players, or sort of assuming that players will stay and be loyal, but that's not how the game works. It's not how clubs treat players as much as anything else. So these things don't happen very often.
Yeah, more Steven Gerrard to come. But we're going to take a couple of minutes break, and then we'll return to the former England captain. But when we're back, we'll look at all of the sports stories in the morning's papers we haven't already covered, including this in the Scottish Sun. Yeah, not we go again. Slight tweak on that. Let's go again. Could Gerrard be back in the Ibrox dugout. And Arsenal eye move to Wembley as part of Emirates expansion. Yes, Arsenal hoping to become the club with, once again, the highest capacity stadium in the capital. Welcome back to you at home. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to John and to Paul. And let's get back to Steven Gerrard, shall we? And let's go to the Scottish Sun, because this was a story that, we knew that he would be in the picture. Obviously, he is available as well, Steven Gerrard. And given that Russell Martin was sacked after the shortest managerial reign in Rangers' entire history, 123 days, well, they need to fill that vacancy. So, Paul, is Gerrard the right man for this club at the current time?
It depends how long the current time lasts for, I guess, because things can't get much worse at this moment. And, Steven Gerrard forged good memories at Ibrox. He's shown that he was capable of dealing with the pressure of Ibrox and the demands of the supporters, working with the materials he had. There wasn't much money when he was there, and he built a good team. But, his managerial career since then has been checkered. Villa started well, ended badly. Ettifaq in Saudi, he never really got close to cracking into that top group of clubs that are owned by PIF. So, and I think in his interview with Rio Ferdinand, he talks about wanting to have two more opportunities in the game, which suggests that he maybe feels he's a little bit under pressure to deliver. Now, I think going into Ibrox, feeling pressure on yourself before you even take on that pressure of the role and the pressure of the crowd, I think that could be quite intense. So while I could see that he could go in and improve on what Russell Martin's been able to achieve in the division simply by being more pragmatic, over the long run, this is going to be a challenge. Rangers have struggled against Celtic in recent years. Now you've got the disruptor of Hearts coming through the middle. I think it's a challenge. And I think you've got owners, the San Francisco 49ers group, who wants results, who are ambitious, and who have reputations. They won't want to be embarrassed. I think it's interesting that, looking at former Rangers managers to come back, Gio van Bronckhorst is sitting on the bench at Liverpool as well. He was a guy who built a good team, took them to the Europa League final. So there are other candidates with prior experience there, as well as people who've elsewhere in the game. So I would warn caution, I think, ultimately.
Let's switch our focus to Arsenal and plans to add to the capacity of their stadium. This in the Telegraph. John, at the moment, I actually didn't realise this. Arsenal, 5th largest capacity, and not by any means the largest in London, because we have clubs like Spurs and West Ham who are ahead of theirs. And it would have implications for them in terms of, whilst this work is going on, moving to Wembley, which they've done before. But, obviously there is a very sort of lucrative end to that because we know that there are lots of people who want to have season tickets with Arsenal.
Yeah, my great mate Jeremy Wilson, his name is one of those on this story, and it's a really eye-catching story. I think the most eye-catching for me is that temporary potential move to Wembley, and it's a possibility rather than a certainty at this stage. But what is absolutely crystal clear at the moment is that basically they are looking to expand. The Emirates, open for the best part of 20 years, and basically, it was a magnificent stadium when it opened, and now you look at others, basically all of a sudden it feels a little bit, dare I say it, dated, and basically probably needs a little bit of a facelift, and then also the expansion. Let's not forget here that I think that 10, 12 years ago, the mood in football was that basically you've got to have this massive capacity. Capacity and size is absolutely everything. Then the shift came away from that because lucrative TV deals and sort of kind of, keep it going. And we feel a little bit of a sort of kind of surge back to the attendances and kind of the match day figures and revenues to kind of satisfy the kind of the bean counters, the PSR sums and all that sort of, stuff really. So there's no doubt about it. Quite apart from that, this story actually tells me something I didn't know, which was 100,000 people on the waiting list for a season it, so they can certainly fill it, David.
They can fill it twice over.
Absolutely. It's the hottest ticket in town at the moment, isn't it? They're playing really good football, top of the league, and, there's definitely work here to be done. So it is a fascinating story. But I do think, how do the fans react if they move to Wembley? Listen, I'm old enough to recall a time watching and covering a couple of the seasons in the Champions League at Wembley, those Arsenal games, and it wasn't a good experience, frankly.
Yeah.
Wembley wasn't as good then as it is now, and I don't think it will be a particularly enjoyable. But do you, swallow that pill for a couple of years to kind of, sort of enable?
Spurs played there, didn't they? I think they did. They play?
They did.
Was that?
They
Do you
did.
remember that Manchester City game? Was that game at Wembley?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a classic Messi game again? It felt like quite a long time. And why did it feel quite a long time? Because it probably wasn't that enjoyable. And you look at the sort of kind of experience that Spurs fans have now. I think they're sort of kind of there. Lucky to have the #1 stadium in the world, and they're basically Wembley, just going there, the pitch and everything didn't sort of kind of doesn't compare. And you want to be at home as a club side, and that's the thing really. There's talk about Chelsea doing the same, isn't there? Or it hasn't been. So it's a really, really difficult dilemma. But the long and short of it is that this story says that it'll be over 70,000 in the stadium potentially, and above. And Arsenal, I think, probably need to do that to kind of keep up with the Joneses, to kind of make sure that they're right up there. So it's a really interesting story, this one.
Let's finish off. We've just got a minute and a half or so, Paul. In your paper, The Guardian, and the Rebel R360 League, world's biggest unions vow to ban players who join it. Just worth giving a bit of context here, exactly what it is, a multi-city sort of franchise tournament, but why the unions have acted in concert here in opposition.
I think the argument they're making explicitly is that there is an attempt to take the best talent from the game that currently exists and dump it into a new competition and take all the money that was previously being dispersed through all the leagues around Europe and across the world and just run it through this competition, which for fans of football is going to be very familiar sounding because it sounds like the European Super League. Now, where the R360 project, which is being backed by, I think it's an investment company called Oakvale Capital, it's a business proposition that is currently in front of World Rugby, who haven't approved it yet, and the decision might not be made until next year. But at the same time, you've got all the rumours and reports of players being approached to sign deals, preemptive deals that would take them into this competition. So I think what you're seeing is the rugby is a sport that's in turmoil anyway.
Yeah.
One of the consistent bits is the international game, and you've got people just trying to defend that aspect that just does work and saying hands off, and with the strongest sanction they can use, which is potentially banning players from playing international matches. Yeah,
absolutely. And listen, as you say, rugby needs to do something. The question is it this? And, how does the rest of rugby adapt? OK, we've run out of time, I'm afraid, guys, but lovely to have your company, your insights as always. Thank you, John. Thank you, Paul. We'll speak to you again very soon indeed. If you missed any of the show, another chance to see Back Pages tonight, 1:30. It's also available as a podcast. Download Back Pages, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Join us again Wednesday night. Our guests will be Miguel Delaney from The Independent, Mark Ogden from the ESPN, and more on our exclusive story next. We understand the Rangers want to speak to Gerrard about potential return to Ibrox.